In this show, we talk with Kevin Linich. Kevin's a former teammate of mine and now NCAA official. He talks about his 12-year journey as an NCAA official and the highs and lows. He talks some of the big matches he's had and how he prepares for those matches. Thank you, Kevin, for your time. Good afternoon, Kevin. How you been, man?
I have been well, been well. It's good to see your face and that beard.
Yeah, no, it's I probably shave sometime here soon. But yeah, it's been a minute. We haven't talked about. We've conversed via text and Twitter a few times last few years. But good to see you too, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, glad to be on the show.
Yeah, thanks for taking time. I know you're a busy man. So, just a little background about yourself. How did you get started in wrestling and kind of your path?
So I'm the youngest of three boys, but I was the only one who wrestled in my family.
Okay.
And the only other wrestling connection I had in my family was my uncle, who wrestled for Maple Heights.
Wow.
In the late 60s, early 70s. So like kind of when they were at the peak of their
Pinnacle.
powers.
Right.
He wrestled for Mike Milkovich Sr. And he was a state placer and went on to wrestle at Michigan State University and had a pretty solid career. So that was my only connection. And I just remember my dad asking me, when I was 8 years old, he's like, "Do you want to try wrestling?" And I'm like, "Sure, yeah." So we went to the Mayfield Wrestling Club, which has a rich history and a lot of great wrestlers have come out of that club. But yeah, he took me to practice and I really liked it. You know, I think I had a lot of energy and had was kind of naturally aggressive and it just seemed to be a good fit and I really enjoyed it and kept going back and had a lot of fun with it.
Nice. And that led you to university school, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I went to US for high school and had an awesome experience there. Really, really good coach. There it wasn't a room full of hammers. Unfortunately, that was probably the only downside to it. So back when I was in high school, you were allowed to go work out with other teams if you chose to do that. And fortunately, we had some really good teams and individuals around my weight class in the area. So I would go up to Mayfield. I would go to Maple Heights. I would go to St. Ed's, and roll around with some of these other really good guys around my weight, and that certainly helped me get better. Kind of get my butt kicked a little bit by the St. Ed's guys.
Yeah, there's Northeast Ohio. Yeah, there's no shortage of tough rooms, and that's definitely
No.
a good area to be in. So, and then it led you to D1, right? Kent State and Cleveland State. Also, I mean, not too many guys can say that. A D1 athlete, right?
Yeah, it was a great experience overall. My 3 years at Kent were awesome. I got to get whooped on by you and
No.
and your brother and a bunch of other really good guys at Kent, and it was a great experience. And then I ended up transferring to to Cleveland State, and got to wrestle under Jack Effner, which was cool. He was a great guy, and gosh, at that time he was still kicking the crap out of everybody in the wrestling room,
Bad dude.
including me.
Right.
He was unbelievable. The dude never aged. Yeah, and then it was funny because you and I ended up wrestling in a dual meet against one another when I
What are the
transferred to
odds?
Cleveland State.
Right. What are the odds of that? Right.
I still remember that, and you got the better of me that day.
Yeah, it's all right. It's old war stories, right? No,
Absolutely.
Coach Effner, man, he was something else. I know my brother Drew's real close to going to Cleveland State. Drew, back in the day, before the Burnett's around our area, a lot of guys would go up to Cleveland State. Actually, Nate Shear and I talked about a little bit one of the earlier episodes, and I guess Coach Effner's down that way in Virginia. I guess Nate gets to see him quite a bit. So I don't know quite a bit, but he crosses paths with him quite a bit. So
Yeah, I think he's down in the Virginia Beach area.
yeah. So you're now an NCAA official back at Cleveland State. Even before that at Kent State. Did you think that was one of your paths, or how did that path come about?
I had no plans to become an official, during college or even the couple years after college. So after college, I got into coaching for a couple years. I coached at my high school for 2 years, and that honestly was a fantastic experience. University school got really, really good around that time, and we're a top 10 team in Division II in the state of Ohio at that point.
What,
And
Hightower and who else did they have, right?
well,
Or
Hightower
was it?
was after me, but you
Oh,
had
okay,
Adam
okay, okay.
Krawinski,
Okay.
Dennis Roach, Mike Slavich, Jonathan Stone, Chris Tripp.
Okay. Oh, Trip. Yeah.
There were a bunch of really, really good guys who came through the program,
Mhm.
and I just happened to be there at that time.
Okay.
And I worked really, really closely with the lightweights, obviously. So
Mhm.
Adam Krawinski and Dennis Roach and Jonathan Stone, and Roach went on to win a state title the year after I stopped coaching there. But I did get to coach in the state finals for Adam Krawinski, and that
Nice.
was an awesome, awesome experience. I think it unfortunately he lost, but it was really special for me because I never got a chance to wrestle in the state finals in high school. I took third and fourth, but to coach in it
Mhm.
was, I think, equally satisfying for me
Right.
to know that I helped prepare this individual to get there. So that was a great experience. Yeah, the only bummer was that he didn't win.
Right. No, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
So then, so to finish answering your question, sorry.
yeah.
I I then was coaching at Mayfield High School, and working full time at this point, obviously, because I'm done with school, and it just I didn't have enough time to commit to coaching that I personally wanted to give.
Mhm.
If I can't be there going through the whole practice every day with the kids, I it didn't feel right to me. So there was, and I was engaged at that point, getting ready to get married. And the 2007, the 0708 season was like the first year since I was 8 years old that I wasn't involved with the sport of wrestling at all.
Mhm.
And it was like driving me crazy.
Like, what do I do with my time type thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, this is terrible.
Yeah.
So I had some friends who were already on the college scene. Chris Shears being one of them, who I'm sure you
Yeah.
remember from
Yeah.
Madison,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Jody Chesborough, who's a little bit older, but
Right.
mentor guy.
Mhm.
I bumped into them somewhere. I think I was just watching a dual meet somewhere. It might have been at John Carroll or Cleveland State. I don't even remember. But Chris came up to me afterwards, and we've known each other a long time. We used to work out together through high school and college. But he's like, "Yeah, man, you should get it. You should become an official. We need more young guys who know
Mhm.
wrestling and this and that." I'm like, "Yeah, maybe. Let me think about it." And then Jody called me like a week later. He's like, "Dude, you gotta get into officiating." And
Mhm.
so I did. I listened to him, and I took the high school officiating class. Got licensed at the high school level my first year. Became a member of the Northeast Ohio Wrestling Officials Association, which I'm now president of.
Nice.
Um, and I think I knew I had been around the sport long enough and at every level where I had a really good base of knowledge of the rules and a feel for kind of what's going to happen next or what should happen in this position. And it was just a really good fit for me. So at that point, it was just, learning all the rules and proper mechanics and all that stuff. So that's how it started.
That's pretty cool. No, it's funny because I was talking to my brother Drew, as we mentioned. I talked to him quite a bit, but that's the one you talk about coaching and giving your all, and you're getting busy, and that's one thing Drew mentioned. He's like, whatever Kevin does, he does it 100%. That's exact. When I told him you were having on, he's like, he'd be a great show because whatever he does, and he's like, obviously not surprised, the level of officiating you're at, but that's exactly what Drew said.
That could be good and bad though.
Yeah, right. No, yeah, right. You get too immersed in things sometimes. No, but,
Exactly.
obviously you're doing a great job. But as with anything, right, any profession, you kind of have those first few years. Anything you had in those first few years that you kind of look back and like you would tell yourself or tell a younger official, like, hey, this is, you're going to think it's going to be X, but it's really going to be closer to Y?
Yeah. So I can only speak on my personal
Right.
experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think looking back at it now, I thought that I was ready for bigger things sooner than I probably actually was ready for those bigger
Gotcha.
things.
Okay.
And I'm glad that um, the process for me to get where I wanted to be took longer than I probably initially wanted it to,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Right. Right.
I think everything that's supposed to happen will happen at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that was the case in my officiating journey. I did that 1 year of high school, and I'm still involved at the high school level, obviously. But then I got brought into college officiating in my second year because of Jody and Chris Shears. And I realized early on that that's where I wanted to be. That was the level that I aspired to become really good at. And not to say that high school officiating wasn't important to me. It just I set my goal on becoming the best college official I could be. Um, so that's the route I chose to focus on pretty early on.
Cool. Now, a lot like coaching, I'm sure, right? Guys get into it and they're like, I should be a head coach right away or whatever. They think they're going to be this. And it's like, it's just like any profession. So what was your first ever official assignment?
Whew. At the high school level,
Yeah. First one. Do you remember your first time going out there or anything? Or
I don't remember exactly where it was. That's a really good question. I might have to look back at my schedules because I
okay.
actually keep spreadsheets of my schedule every year.
Okay.
It was definitely a middle school event, I'm sure.
Okay.
I don't know where, but it was probably a middle school duel.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't recall any serious issues or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the hard part about becoming an official early on is that nobody knows who the heck you are.
Yeah.
Once I got into the high school duels and tournaments, transitioning from middle school into high school stuff, I was still not that far removed from high school and college wrestling, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people would recognize my name or recognize me.
Mm-hmm.
So that certainly helped. That doesn't mean they're going to like you as an official, but
They have a little bit of more respect, right? They'll say, okay, he has
yeah,
this track record of, wrestling experience, right?
exactly. At least it gives you some credibility in the wrestling world in general. But you got to earn that credibility as an official, and that certainly takes time.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember your first college match, what that was?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
No,
I was
that's all
trying
right.
to
No,
go
it's all
back
right.
through the.
I got another question. So being, going off that, that respect, right? You're a former D1 wrestler.
Mhm.
I mean, that, I think means a lot when you meet these new coaches or they find that out about you or know that about you, right? But I guess internally or looking at yourself, what do you think you took away from that? Now being on the mat on the other side of things instead of a competitor.
So yeah, I think obviously being a competitor, I knew just about every position I was going to see.
Mm-hmm.
I knew kind of how things should unfold, and I kind of knew how to anticipate where certain situations were going to end up, which allowed me to be in better position to be able to make the right calls. I had a good knowledge of the rules, obviously, from being a competitor. I knew what you should and shouldn't do. But then also coaching really helped me as an official as well, because I know how much time is put into coaching, how much they care about their athletes, how badly they want their athletes and their teams to win and be successful. And So I think that allows you as an official to be able to empathize with coaches and sort of see their point of view. And it took me a while, I'll be honest, because nobody likes to be yelled at as an official. Nobody likes to be challenged. And there is a certain level of ego that comes with being an official, which I had to learn over time to really tame down, honestly. I think my first, I would say 4 or 5 years, I was probably difficult as an official to
Put it nicely, right?
to put it nicely. Yeah. I would say that I probably wasn't very approachable at times. And, luckily you have other officials who are around you that are experienced, and some of them became really good mentors to me and pointed these things out. And, some of that stuff was hard to hear. And then I think what really allowed me to grow was not only having those mentors to point these things out to me, but also to see yourself on video. And sort of body language says a lot, and I didn't have very good body language, but I didn't know it until I saw it. I'm like, oh my God, I look
was
like
it
an
a
ass,
confidence body language thing, or kind of just
I think it was an overconfidence body language thing. And I just came off as like arrogant and cocky, to be totally honest with you. And I had an official point this out to me, and I was like, man, really? And these are guys that know me. That's not.
They were looking out for you, right? They were looking out for you, right?
Yeah, and that's certainly not how I wanted to be as an official. And I definitely knew that wasn't gonna. That kind of attitude wasn't gonna get me to where I wanted to go. So I had to do some serious maturing as an official and really focus on a few things to get better and be more approachable and more understanding with the coaches and the athletes. And, I'm really grateful that people pointed those things out to me.
That's awesome. That's cool though, because it's like any profession, right? I mean, you have some mentors that kind of take you under their wing and that let you, that you could have stayed that path and not be where you're at today, right?
Absolutely.
With that situation, and then you mentioned, kind of your progression as official. Or anyone specifically, or other stories besides, maybe the confidence or overconfidence thing, anything else that kind of, in looking back, was that tipping point? Like, okay, I think I got it now, or you felt you moved to that next level in a way?
First off, as an official, it is very dangerous to think that now you got it, because as soon as you start thinking that, that's when the
wheels fall
hits
off.
the fan. That's when the wheels start to come off. So this profession is it's continually evolving, improving, and growing. And that's what I'm still continuing to do, even though I reached the level that I wanted to reach. There's still just so much to learn, and it's kind of like golf. You can play it your whole life, but you're never going to master it.
That's a real good point.
And that's how officiating is. I feel like, the really good guys who I've learned from, guys who have done 10, 15, 20 Division I national championship tournaments, they're still working on their craft and getting better, because just when you think you've seen it all, you haven't.
Well, let's bring that up, right? One match I seen you on, obviously, was the Iron Man. Do you have any Iron Man stories, whether it be that shoe match or another one? But you think you see it all as official, then that happens. I guess. Anything you want to talk about with that?
Yeah, Iron Man has a history of putting me into some pretty gnarly situations. Ironman is just it's a phenomenal event, start to finish. I mean, you get first round matchups where state champs are wrestling each other in the first
It's
round,
crazy.
and it's crazy. The level of wrestling there is really really high, and the coaches are all really cool. It's just an awesome atmosphere. It's just very well ran and great fans and very like intimate atmosphere too.
Cozy, right?
Very cozy, yes. But I have been fortunate to be chosen to officiate the feature match for, gosh, I think 6 years in a row. And it seems like every feature match has something crazy happen. But yeah, I think it was 3 years ago when Shoegate took place, and it was between two very, very high level guys who, in my observation, didn't care for each other a whole lot. But you had Riel Woods from Montini Catholic and Joey Silva from Lake Highland Prep down in Florida, and both very intense physical wrestlers, and their coaches were the same. And, I've gotten to know both the coaches over the years of doing that tournament, and they're really, really good guys who are super passionate about the sport, and really care a great deal about their athletes. But there was, I've been officiating for 12 years now, and I've never had a shoe come off in a match. And in that match, it not only happened once, but it happened twice. Right. It was literally the difference in the match. I mean, it was a very, very tight match, very hotly contested, went into multiple rounds of overtime. And the second time the shoe came off was in overtime, and it ended up being the difference in the match. And one coach was accusing the other guy of ripping the shoe off, and the other guys, no, you're crazy, this and that. And it got real heated for a few minutes.
Real quick, right.
Coaches were face to face, and security came on the mat, and I'm just like, holy moly, what is happening here? Yeah. And you had one of my best friends and fellow officials on the podcast recently, Matt Sorochinski, and he he had a front row seat to it all. He was sitting at the head table, sitting next to Willie and Zeb, who were announcing the match at the time. So Matt got to see this whole thing unfold, and I remember
the pressure wasn't on him either, right?
No, he was loving every minute of it. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I remember looking over at him at one point, like, holy crap. And he was just sitting there laughing and smiling. I'm like, oh man, I could use you out here right now.
Yeah. You're probably, is this real life right now? No, but you handled it, so well. I mean, I remember, watching that, and I think I sent you a DM or something, just saying good job on that. Cause it was like, holy cow, you handled it the right, obviously the right way, who knew who was in what position, what, the rule situation, but, that was wild. That was, one of the craziest things. That was the talk for a while. And, the way you handled that, was awesome. You know what I mean?
I'll admit, man, when the first shoe coming off incident happened, I wasn't 100% sure what the right call was. And luckily I had a really good assistant, Justin Moss from down in the Akron Canton area. Cause in college, it was a stalling call at that time. And so I think I initially raised a fist for stalling, and then Justin called me over, and thank God he did, and that's what a good assistant should do. He's like, hey, it's a technical violation and it's a point. I'm like, oh, all right, cool. So we made that correction and hit him with the technical violation and, tried to get the shoe secured. We got some tape on it the second time, so it didn't happen again. Like I couldn't believe it happened again. I literally, we're going through this match, and it's like tied at this point, or maybe a 1-point match, and it happens again. I'm like, You gotta be kidding me.
Right. Like,
This
right.
is unbelievable.
Right. I've
Oh,
never
it was
seen it
like
happen
worst
either.
case.
Right. I've never seen it happen. You remember Tobin? He was
Yeah.
he used to not tie his shoes in practice. I remember. I forget who he's wrestling. Someone took it off and threw it. His excuse was it cuts off his circulation.
Oh my God.
That's a typical Tobin story of reason not to tie your shoes. But anyways, no, but that that Iron Man final was something else. That was pretty crazy.
It was wild.
You have any other stories from Ironman? Because I mean, that's obviously the tournament, and I guess if you don't have any other stories, you kind of touched on it. Does it make it tough, kind of going from high school to college, or back to high school, then back to, or how vice versa?
Um, it was early on because I did a bit more high school and college. My first few years where I was going back and forth,
Okay.
probably more than I wanted to. And then as my college career started to, the number of assignments at the college level started to surpass the number of assignments at the high school level. I cut back the high school level assignments, and for the last, I'd say probably 6 years, Ironman has been the only high school event I do.
Okay.
So that allowed me to understand the rules a little bit better,
Mm-hmm.
and not have to flip flop as much. I do have a funny story though, Ironman related.
Mm.
So this was probably it might have been the day after Shoegate, to be honest with you.
Oh, geez.
I had a duel at Ohio University. It was Missouri at OU.
Okay.
And
we know how
first
OU
match
could be, right?
yeah. That's always a good time going down there. First match at 125. I think it was Shakur Laney and one of the Assad brothers from Brecksville.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Assad gets on top and he locks up a tilt. And here's me. I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no 5 count in college,
Yep.
The rule had changed at that point to only a 4 near fall count. But I had been at Ironman the 2 days previous,
right.
Making 5 counts. And as soon as I hit 5, I'm like, gosh, dang it. And I looked up and Coach Smith from Missouri is like, this is an Ironman, Lenich. And I was like, oh God. So yeah, I learned my lesson there.
Yeah, because they've, when we wrestled, in college, they're pretty similar rules, right? It was easy to transition, as a wrestler and probably as an official, but now they're, they've changed quite a bit. I feel like, I mean, I think for the better, but there's a lot of differences. So
there are still a lot of differences. High school is starting to make some really good changes that are more similar to college. But I think the advantage that college has with some of these rule differences is they have bigger mats and more space. So they could make some of these out of bounds rule changes that in the majority of cases you wouldn't be able to make at the high school level just because of spatial requirements and safety.
Right. That's probably what makes Ironman tough, right? The small mats,
Real
small mats, and everyone's sitting around the mats and then some, right?
Yeah, but that's also what makes Ironman.
Right. That's true. Yeah, I agree that intimate atmosphere definitely is pretty cool. Speaking of rules, then, anything from your position that you would like to see, not position, but I guess an opinion, I would say, that you would like to see, whether it's at high school or college, rule changes?
I think the college rules are in a really good spot right now. There's probably a couple things that could be clarified, I think, a little bit more, or maybe worded a little bit better. The one that comes to mind is, and you see this, I don't want to say regularly, but several times throughout the year, you'll see this where a takedown is called, for example, maybe like 2 or 3 seconds earlier than it should have been called.
Mm-hmm.
Guy ends up finishing the takedown, but a coach will challenge that when he initially awarded it, the takedown wasn't there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And because of how the rules are written pertaining to video review, if the coach changes that call and says, you know what, or if the official changes that call and says, you know what, coach, you're right, it wasn't there when I called it, that takedown's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you make a change, anything that happens after that change is dead.
It's bad time, right?
Right. So even though the guy was going to get that takedown,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that I think we could maybe clean that up a little bit. And I know that is something that is being discussed. Because you never want to penalize a guy for going out there and doing what he's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are some loopholes in the video review process that coaches have gotten pretty savvy about exploiting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's no fault of theirs. They're
right.
they're
within the
totally
rules.
within the rule.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. No, that's a great point. I never thought of it that way, but that's a great point, kind of, he's going to get the 2, but they kind of, okay,
Right.
here's an opening to nullify that or whatever it may be. But,
and some wise words to all officials listening out there. And this comes from Tim Shields, who is our national coordinator of officials at the NCAA level. His mantra is always, it's better to be a second late than a second early.
Yep.
And sorry, I had an incoming call there.
You're all right. You're good.
So his mantra is, it's always better to be a second late versus a second early, because, it goes back to that video review. If you just patient and let things play out for another second, they're probably going to work themselves out.
Right.
So just let it happen and relax and let things unfold before anticipating a little too quickly.
That's some good advice there. So how long have you been an NCAA official?
This will hopefully.
Right. Here we are, beginning of November, for time reference.
This will be the start of my 12th season as a college official and 13th of a high school official.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, any big matches or tournaments you kind of look back at and like, wow, that was pretty cool or pretty exciting or?
Yeah. So I think the match that I can recall is the biggest thing I'd done up to that point was when I got asked to do Penn State at Oklahoma State in 2015. It was February of 2015. Oh, wow. And there's a whole story that goes along with this. There was another official that was supposed to do the match. I don't know if he got sick or if there were travel plans that got screwed up or whether or what, but I got called like the week of, basically.
Oh, wow.
To go out and do this match. And dude, I'm not gonna lie. Like when I got this call from Mike Allen, who was the assigner at that time, I was nervous on the phone, just knowing that I was going to go do this match. And at that time, the Big 12 didn't use second officials.
Oh, geez.
It was just me.
Out on an island, right?
Yeah. This is, at Oklahoma State, which, Oklahoma State, Iowa, they're like the meccas of college wrestling. And it's middle of February. So I get my travel plans worked out with the Big 12 conference, and I'm scheduled to fly out on a Saturday, like mid-afternoon. The duel was on Sunday at 1:00. Well, my flight gets canceled.
Of course.
Because it was snowing in Cleveland. So I had a backup official, like kind of ready to go if I couldn't get there. We had worked that out. I end up getting out of Cleveland the morning of the duel. I get on a flight and land in Oklahoma City. I landed at like 11:15 local time for a 1:00 duel. And luckily, a good friend of mine, who is now a Hall of Fame wrestling official, Kenny Ritchie, lives in Oklahoma City. Him and his wife picked me up from the airport, and like we hauled butt to Stillwater. And we got there like a little after noon, probably like 12:15, 12:20, which I always like to get to wherever I'm officiating like at least an hour ahead of time. Just kind of take your time, get loose, take a walk around and get a feel for things. Well, I didn't really have time to do that here.
No.
So it's just chaos like the whole morning leading up to this match. And fortunately, I had Kenny there, and also had another local, Pat Fitzgerald, who is also a Hall of Fame wrestling official from Oklahoma. Just two super, super great guys who they took me to each team's locker room. I got to meet John Smith and freaking Cale Sanderson. These guys are like, they're my heroes. I had like posters of them.
I'd short notice on top of it, right? You're like, I got to officiate this duel.
Yeah. Right. So like, these guys each have shoes named after them. And
good point.
I'm going there to officiate their match. I'm like, at one point, I'm like, should I ask them for their autographs? Or this?
You sign my,
Obviously, I didn't do that, but it was like everything just came full circle for me. I'm like, holy crap! Like I am at Oklahoma State officiating a match with John Smith in one corner and Cale Sanderson in another. And there's nobody out here helping me. Like I got to do this by myself. So I'm like, dude, I was so nervous. I was honestly probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life for anything, not just a wrestling match, but for anything. And I was like physically like reacting to the nerves. I won't go into great detail about that.
Right. I got you.
It was a rough lead up to the start of that match. But then, you get on the stage. There was like 8,000 people there that day. And there are a few things that, man, I would love to have gone back and do differently if I could have. One of them being, so Oklahoma State, their big rival is Oklahoma. They have the Red River rivalry there. Right. And Oklahoma is red. They're a red team. Oklahoma State is orange. They're wearing their orange singlets that day. And Penn State came in their traditional blue singlets. So I'm like, okay, this is easy. Penn State is going to be green and Oklahoma State is going to be red. And so I tell this to the girl working the score table, and she's like, oh, we're always green. And I'm like, well, it's going to be easier for me if you're red. So I'm going to make you red.
Oh,
well, I didn't learn about this whole like tradition until after the duel was over. Eric Guerrero, who was Oklahoma State's assistant at the time and a 3-time national champ for Oklahoma State, he called me when I was in the locker room after the match, and he's like, hey, nice job today, but for future reference, if you ever come back here,
we're green.
We are never red. He goes, and he explained the whole thing to me. He's like, Oklahoma's red, we are green, and I'm like, Roger that. Won't happen again. So that I don't think I got started off on a great foot because of that, but whatever. But man, this duel was just insane. Like back and forth, tight matches. I think there were like 4 overtime matches.
Oh wow!
Like 2 or 3 other matches that were 1 or 2 point matches. And I knew it was a close duel, but I didn't know the team score until after the 197-pound match. I finally looked up at the scoreboard to check the team score, and it's 18-18. And I'm like, oh, holy crap. So we're going in the heavyweight tide here, like winner takes all. And I'm like, oh my God. So of course, heavyweight goes into overtime.
Oh, jeez.
And then there's just like all these crazy close situations. Sorry, my dog's saying
You're
hi.
fine. You're fine. I got a dog. I get it.
There's all these crazy situations, close, tight calls at the, as time's running out. Just in that heavyweight match alone, I think we had 2 or 3 reviews.
Wow.
And there was a call I made in, I think it was the second set of 30-second tiebreakers, where I awarded a reversal to, Oklahoma State, and it got reviewed, and I stuck with the call, but Oklahoma State ended up winning the duel, by the way.
Okay.
And a lot of it was because of that call. And if I could have done it again, I probably wouldn't have made that call.
All right. Okay.
It was a tough situation, but pretty sure I got it wrong. But you again,
that's how you learn, right?
You learn, and I took a lot away from that duel. I learned a few things. Number one, that I was capable of getting through a duel like that, as nervous as I was. For me, the nervousness is all the buildup and lead up to the start. Once the whistle blows, you're like, everything else kind of fades away, and you're locked in on what's going on.
Your natural instincts and training kick in, right?
Exactly. So I took away some confidence that I could do a match of that caliber. But at the same time, I also realized that you're going to make mistakes. And luckily at the college level, you have an opportunity and a lot of tools to fix your mistakes. But without an assistant and just me out there, that unfortunately didn't happen in that duel meet. I got one of those calls wrong, and made a difference in the duel. So that sucks, obviously. But you could point to 20 other things that made a difference in that duel.
Right.
It wasn't one call, even though to Penn State it seemed like
it was that call right to them. Right.
I got back to the locker room after that duel, and I was like so physically and emotionally spent from everything that had occurred that day, from having to fly out of Cleveland early, and
the nerves, probably the whole week, right?
The nerves, the buildup, just the whole duel being so intense, and your eyeballs like get tired after a while because you're just so focused on every little thing that's happening. Dude, I was like just so exhausted afterwards, and I remember Pat and Kenny met me in the locker room afterwards, and they had a lot of really good feedback. Had some constructive criticism as well, which was, coming from those guys. It's like, yeah, I'm going to listen to whatever you guys have to offer, So it was a really good experience overall. And I think was probably a really significant turning point in my career. So I'm grateful that I got that opportunity.
That's sweet. That's a great story. You get called up, we got like, oh, you're in, putting you in. Yeah. Flight delayed, and then, big stage. So you talked a little bit earlier, kind of the overconfidence, right? And then, going to the match, kind of, okay, am I, how am I going to do? And the nerves kicking in, it's a lot like competing, right? You're going on a big stage, and you have responsibility. What's your self-talk like? It's a balancing act, right? Confidence and, having the nerves. So what's that self-talk like when you're going into a big duel or a big match, that, it's going to be a big responsibility for you? What's that self-talk? I lost you here, I think. Hold on. I think I lost you. I can re-ask it. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I heard the whole question.
Okay. Yeah, you froze up on my end. You froze, so I didn't want to, so I can re-ask it.
Yeah, no, I heard the whole question.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and just start whenever, because I can chop it in. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's a great question. I'm gonna answer that in kind of like a couple parts.
Okay.
for me personally, officiating isn't a seasonal thing. It's a year-round process for me where I'm always studying the rule book, watching a lot of matches, watching other officials who I respect, and I've been doing nationals for several years, just so I think the more you see tough situations and tough calls, the more confident you become when you are faced with them yourself, and you know what the call should be. So it's to me, officiating is very similar to competing. You go to practice every day and you work on your high crotches and your doubles and your singles, and you master those basics and get comfortable in all these positions. Well, it's no different as an official, or shouldn't be, in my opinion. It's something that you need to train your brain and your body for, so you know what to expect, and you're confident and comfortable making these tough calls. So I think before big matches, I get really nervous for dual meets, at any level, whether it's high school or Division III, Division II, Division I at the college level. Dual meets are a different atmosphere than a tournament, because it's one mat, two teams. You got the same coaches in that chair for 10 straight bouts. You don't get a break from the coaches chirping in your ear. And everybody's focused on the match that is on your mat. Whereas a tournament, you got a bunch of other things going on around you. So I always do get more nervous for dual meets. But when I'm in the locker room, I try to do a good job of physically warming up, to get my heart rate going, make sure I stretch, because I don't want to take the first 2 or 3 matches to get in the flow of things. I want to be ready when the whistle blows. And then I always pray before matches, and it's pretty much the same thing for every single match or tournament. I pray for confidence with my calls. I pray for swift feet to carry me around the mat and not hurt myself. I pray for keen eyesight so I can see everything that's happening on the mat. I pray that I have that I'm quick to listen but slow to speak when I'm dealing with coaches. I pray for patience. I pray for safety of all the competitors, myself, my fellow officials, the coaches. So there's a lot of things that I pray for, and I'm always super grateful to be wherever I am, because I know there's a lot of guys who want to have the opportunity, those kind of opportunities. And there's a lot of guys who are ready to take my place at any given moment. So I'm always super grateful to be doing what I'm doing, and doing something that I absolutely love to do.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Excuse me. You touched on 2 things. I'm curious. First, you mentioned video, right? You kind of reviewing video all season long. What are some of the platforms that something the Officials Association provides you, or I guess for officials out there, what kind of video tools do you use in the off season, I guess, to sharpen your skills?
So there are some like rules clinics that are done in the off season. Traditionally, 2020 aside, because It's a COVID year, most of those are in person, which are great because you get to network with a bunch of other officials from around the country. And, they always have like a tough call section, or in different video clips. And so those are really good events. This year we did it virtually with the NWCA, the National Wrestling Coaches Association, put on a really, really good virtual clinic. And the officials portion of it was very well done, in my opinion. Had some great video clips. And it was cool because there were a bunch of coaches who were attending the virtual clinic, as well as officials.
Okay.
And as these videos were being shown, you got to vote on what the outcome was. And it was really interesting to see the coaches versus the officials. There's definitely some work that needs to be done to close the gap, but that's an ongoing thing. And we have a great national coordinator of officials who I think has done an absolutely tremendous job of trying to narrow that gap between the coaches' understanding of the rules and the officials, where the officials are coming from and why they make the calls they do. But then you have, luckily, technology is obviously a huge part of our world now, and there's cameras everywhere, wherever you go. So most matches are either on YouTube or, I have the Watch ESPN app, the ESPN Plus. So a lot of I'm an ACC conference official, primarily, and all the ACC duels are put on ESPN Plus or the ACC network. So those are accessible. Big Ten Network does a great job of airing a ton of their duels, and then BTN Plus, you can find those online. So there's a lot of wrestling out there.
And you kind of came up with the video, right? When you got your start was kind of when, Flow and things like that started to take off, and, these Big Ten networks and things like that. So it kind of probably went hand in hand with your training, right?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, like Flow and my officiating career are almost like step for step as far as when Flow Wrestling took off and when I started officiating. So yeah, I've seen some really cool growth and technological developments out of them, for sure.
No, it's pretty cool how things have come. From my coaching and what I do here in Ohio with the youth, it's pretty cool. The relationships I have with officials too. And hey, do you have this match recorded? Can you share it with me? I want to use it, share with my network or whatever it is. So we're living a good time, I think with in the wrestling world. But getting back, go ahead. Were you going to say something or?
The only point I was going to make is the amount of exposure that wrestling is getting is awesome. But at the same time, we as officials are also getting exposed every single match. So literally every call you're making out there is being dissected by somebody,
right.
Which can be good or bad depending on what you're doing out there.
No, I think it's good because then, like you said, you made a mistake in a call, and now, if these things are getting dissected, you might not be making this mistake, but another new official, okay, now I know what I need to be looking for, why this was called that way. So, it might not be in that snapshot of an instance, right, for that official, which, hopefully they have that, thick skin, but, in the big picture of officiating, I think it's the right thing.
100% agree. Yep.
Getting back, you said it's a year-round thing, and obviously, as we know, the whole COVID thing and getting ready for the season, I guess in a traditional season, how do you get ready for the season? I know you like to climb and things like that. What is there certain things you have a routine or, a set schedule? Here's what I'm doing, 3 months out or 6 months out, because it's, physically and, exhausting, and it's, not something you can just jump right into. So I guess talk that through. Any tips you have for some new officials and preparing for their seasons?
Yeah, no, that's another great question, Jared. Officiating wrestling, it is physically demanding. There's no doubt about it. I think some people might overlook that initially. But man, when you're doing an all-day tournament and you're up and down and back and forth on your feet for, sometimes 8, 10, 12 hours, it is exhausting. And I'm in really good shape. I try to stay in shape all year round. So to answer your initial question, I don't think my routine changes a whole lot as I get closer to the season.
Okay.
I do a lot of running, like 50 miles a week usually.
Oh, wow. Holy cow. That's awesome.
I'm nursing a foot injury right now. So hopefully
that's what I was going to ask. How you holding up? Maybe we're not as young as we once were, but
no, we're not. But yeah, my body, thank God, is held up really well. I was fortunate to not really have any serious injuries throughout my wrestling
Awesome.
career.
Me too. Knock
Um,
on wood. Knock on
yeah,
wood.
yeah. So I very fortunate to not, be achy or sore or
Mhm.
like have these old injuries that are creeping up on me now. But occasionally you get
Right.
some bumps and sprains and whatnot, especially this time of year. Like I was out running earlier this week, and with all the leaves falling,
Mhm.
I like to run trails mostly. It gets a little sketchy though, because the leaves are covering the ground. You can't necessarily see what's underneath them sometimes. So I think that's what happened. I landed funky on my one of my steps, and it's bugging me a little bit. But no, I mean I still do some weight training. Obviously, I don't lift as heavy as I used to, but
Mhm.
I think weight training is very important to maintain, even if you can't throw around hundreds of pounds anymore. Just
Mhm.
to move some weight is critical. Um, and I do a lot of body weight exercises because when you're out on the mat, yeah, you're carrying your body around for 8, 10, 12 hours a
Right.
day sometimes. So a lot of just body weight squats, lunges, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, things like that, just to kind of keep everything tight. And you know, I think the way I look at it is I understand how much work the athletes put in to get their bodies prepared to compete. Um, I should be doing the same as an
Mhm.
official. Like,
Mhm.
I think it's just for me, it's out of respect for the athletes and the coaches who are preparing to compete. Like, I need to be in the best shape I can be so that I can keep up with the action and maintain the proper position and be where I need to be to make the right calls.
Right. Right. I mean, if you're right half step behind, right, you might not have that angle, and really, it's the whole compounding thing, right? You want to be, I'm sure, officiating as long as you're able, and the better you take care
Yeah.
of yourself, right? They were just talking about what Russell Wilson spends $1 million a year on staying healthy. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
well, that's pretty serious, but obviously that's how his his living is made. But that's pretty
Exactly.
cool. Yeah. So, well, you have anything you want to share, ask, tell? Anything else you want to talk about? I mean, you've covered a lot, but some great stories. Any other stories or anything you want to share?
I think what I'll share is, I'll get back to the whole mentoring
Mhm.
thing, and just like how grateful I am for having such great mentors who saw something in me early on, that caught their attention, and whatever it was that they thought I had some potential in as an official. And I can't stress the importance of surrounding yourself with those kinds of people. Um, Officiating it's not an individual thing, even though you're out there a lot of times by yourself. Um, it is a team thing. Like for example, like I've been in a text chat group with a couple other fellow officials for probably about a year and a half or so. Um, we've had this stream going, and we will send each other video clips back and forth, and analyze calls and situations. And then recently, probably I don't know, in the last 6 months, we added some new members to our group chat.
Cool.
And there, so as of right now, there's one, two, three guys who are current Division I national championship officials. There's another guy who is one of my fellow ACC conference championship officials and has done D3 nationals a couple times. And then we added um, three like younger up and coming officials, one from Ohio, one from Indiana, one from Pennsylvania, into the group. And it's been super awesome. At times it's overwhelming. Like
Mhm.
there'll be times I have to silence the notifications, and I'll look at my phone and there'll be like 97 text messages unread,
Like,
um, but it's been a tremendous learning experience for everybody in the group, to be able to discuss these situations and pick each other's brains about, why we feel it should have been called this way or why it was called that way. And it's really been an awesome tool for all of the officials involved. And, I would encourage more people to do that if they're not already doing that. And just, you gotta find a few guys that you can trust for honest feedback.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. Anybody can tell you, oh, that was a great call, or you had a good match. Well, I don't need to know about the good calls I
You're
made.
not
I need to
growing
know
from
about
that, right?
where I screwed up.
Yeah.
Tell me what I could have done better or differently, or why you don't agree with this call, and let's have some dialogue about it. And I think that's really where you grow as an official. I mean, it's just like a wrestler. It's like, I know I hit that high crotch really well. Why didn't I finish that single leg?
Right. That's a great point.
So
no, that's a great point. Any you're kind of at the higher, you're at the NCAA level, when at the peak of the profession. Anything you see that from the high school or junior high or below that officials can be doing to kind of lack of a better term, recruit? You had you mentioned earlier, two guys pretty much sought you out and said, hey, come on, Kevin, come officiate, and who knows if they didn't have that conversation. So I guess anything out there that some of these high schools or junior high or local high school associations can do to recruit new guys.
Jared, I'd be lying if I said that wasn't a problem right now.
Right.
Recruiting new officials, it is certainly a challenge that I'm experiencing right now as president of the Northeast Ohio Officials Association. Our numbers as an association have gone down in the last 13 years since I've been a part of it. For a long time, I think we were regarded as probably the strongest high school officials association in the state. But it's very difficult to convince somebody to come officiate and say, what are your selling points? It's like, hey, come get yelled at for 3-4 hours and make $75.
Yeah.
It's like,
right.
It's a tough sell. So you gotta find the right people who not only want to give back to the sport, but are willing to learn and be coachable, and are not focused on making a ton of extra money initially, obviously.
Right.
Because as a newer official, you're not in it for the money. I got news for you.
And you're going to have a tough, handful of years before you kind of break through and right and really get it. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, shoot, I've been doing this for 13 years now, and listen, I'm not getting yelled at any less than I was before. Well, probably a little bit, but you're still getting yelled at, is my point.
Right.
I'm better off financially at this point as an official, but I'm still getting yelled at. But I think another thing I would say to any official, especially new ones, is just to take it seriously. Treat it as another profession and not just a hobby or a seasonal thing. Like if you really want to get better and you have goals that you want to move up the ladder, you have to take it seriously, and always ask for that feedback, and be willing to take constructive criticism and develop yourself as an official.
Oh, that's a great point. That's what I don't know if I was talking with Matt on the air with this, but one thing we talked about too is, obviously with the COVID, I was saying this back in July to, I think, Sean Andrews, Ohio High School Coach Association, that's one thing we got to worry about, hey, it might not happen this year, but next year, with a shortage of officials for whatever it may be. But I think there's an angle there as a former wrestler, right? You see it. I see it in the youth scene. These dads come up with their kid and coach them through, and then they're done and they're out of the youth world, or excuse me, wrestling world. I think there's something there, but that like a dad, son combo of some sort where, look, hey, you're not running around to tournaments anymore. Let's go officiate this youth tournament or
Yeah.
this junior high tournament and go, make a couple bucks, but we get to hang out all day on these mats and, I've seen a few sets across the state of Ohio. And, so I don't know. I guess that's what I'm trying to tell people. Hey, identify some people in your area that you can kind of recruit to come out and, see if they have a brother or a sibling or a cousin, whatever it may be. That's definitely an angle I think that's overlooked of, okay, we get to spend some quality time. Let's go travel to this tournament and do it. But anyway.
Yeah. And you make a good point. Officials we have a great time.
Right.
And that's a huge part of it is traveling around, especially for somebody in my position. It's really cool going to these colleges and universities and, being a part of, in my opinion, the best sport in the world. I'm sure you'd agree.
Mm-hmm.
And just being a part of like such historical, teams and I don't know how it's really crazy sometimes when I think about it like that. I'm officiating for these coaches who are just like legends in our sport.
Right.
And I think that's why you need to take it so seriously is these coaches, they'll fry you. You know what I mean? if you don't go out there and do a good job, like you're going to hear about it. There's no doubt.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just building the relationships with fellow officials, it's really cool. I have friends, not only all over the state of Ohio because of my high school experience, but like literally all over the country. And it's really neat. So anytime I'm traveling for work or, for pleasure, if I'm going on vacation somewhere, like chances are wherever I'm going, there's somebody I know in the area and we can meet up for dinner or grab lunch or something. And I like, that's a really important part of it is the relationships that are built through officiating. It's really neat.
Right. I think a lot of people don't see that angle. A lot of, we have our memories growing up wrestling, right? Most of them are off of the mat, right? It's, hey, remember when this happened? Or same thing with coaching, you rarely tell the coaching stories with fellow coaches. Hey, remember when we did this after the tournament or, whatever it is, or hey, met up, but yeah, I think a lot of people don't view officiating in that way, but when they could, I guess I could, build it and turn it into something I enjoy. So, but no, anyways, Kevin, I just want to say thanks for your time, man. Anything else before we sign off here?
Man, I'm good. I shared a lot.
No.
It's been awesome. And I'm really, really grateful that you asked me to do this. And it's been a lot of fun. And I would absolutely do it again if you wanted me to.
Oh, we'll have to do that and, make it a, however often you want to be on and, we'll talk off the air here, but thanks for your time. I appreciate it, Kevin.
You got it, man.